Hey everyone, Rick Oliva here. It is December 15th, and this time of year I get a lot of questions from people looking to buy their first electric guitar either for themselves or for someone else, usually one of their kids. And they ask me, what guitar should I buy? Well, there's a lot of choices, and I can't tell you exactly what guitar to buy, but I'll give you some ideas of things to look for and things that I would recommend you avoid and what you should do if you can't avoid those. So, let's get started. The first thing you want to know is what kind of bridge you want. Now, the bridge, for those that you don't know, the bridge is the part where the strings go into the guitar. Also, this is part of the tail piece. So depending, sometimes people will have separate parts. This particular kind is called a floating bridge, and if you or the person you're buying it for, your kid's like, oh, I want to play like Eddie Van Halen, Steve Vai, I want to play this metal stuff, that's what that floating bridge does. And you'll see it floats in there. It's held, it's balanced by springs on the back, and what happens is the strings pull the bridge this way, the springs pull it back. You get this perfect balance, and now it floats there in the middle, and you can either go backwards or forwards. These I would avoid at all costs on a first guitar. The reason being, they are a lot of work and there are a lot of headaches, especially if you aren't used to tuning your guitar and you aren't used to playing a lot, you don't have extra strings laying around. Because once you set them up for a certain tension of string, which is the size of the string, the gauge of the string. Some people, they'll refer to them as, I use 9s or 10s, or I use 11 to 52s or something like that. I always use the green regular slinkies. But once you get it set up, it's very difficult to change it so that way the bridge stays where you want it. Okay? Also, if you break a string, you'll notice, if this is going, if I pull on this string here, you'll notice the change in tension on one string affects the tuning of all the other strings. If you break a string, when you have your guitar set up with a floating bridge, you aren't going to play again. The song's over until you replace the string. So if this is your only guitar, this is the first guitar, this is your only guitar, and you break a string and you don't have more strings, you probably aren't practicing again until you go to the store and buy more strings. Okay. Also, these are locked in here. They use Allen wrenches to lock the ends, and this is called the double locking nut. So the nut up here, you lock those with Allen wrenches. If you decide, hey, you know what, no, I want this heavy metal guitar with the whammy bar with the double locking tremolo system, because a person at the guitar store said, no, they always stay in tune, which is true until they go out of tune, and then they're a pain in the neck to adjust. Invest in one of these, an Allen wrench tree. Screw it into the back of the neck in a place where you can't really see it if you're playing, so you can't see it here if I'm playing. But that way, you break a string, you go to the store, you come home with your string, but you can't unlock the nut because you don't have the right Allen wrench set at home. Well, now you're also very sad. So, if you go with the floating bridge, which I tell everybody, don't do it. If this is your first guitar, first and only guitar, do not buy a floating bridge. If you're going to, make sure you have the correct tools and a place to store them. Now, say you want that whammy bar, you still want to be able to do that. Is there an option where I don't have a floating bridge? Yes, there is. Strat style guitars, for example. Oops, knocking guitars over here. Strat style guitars have those. I don't know that I need to plug this in, but I'm going to. So I do that. Now, you'll see I have the whammy bar. I can go down, but I have mine, what they call decked, so that way I can't pull it back. What you do, in order to deck it, is on the back, we have these springs. Once you get your guitar in tune, in standard tuning, using the strings that you're going to be using, you screw in these screws so that way these springs pull the bridge all the way back until it's flat with the top of your guitar. Once you do that, now if I break a string, it won't change the tension, and the springs won't pull the bridge back any farther than the top of the guitar. And so then that's how it always sits. Now you can adjust these bridges so that way they're floating. You can lift them up so that way they're a centimeter or a millimeter off the top of the guitar. If this is your first guitar and your only guitar, don't do that. Have it flat against the back of the guitar, deck it, so to speak, so that way you don't have that problem. All right. Now, what you'll notice though is these have what they call single coil pickups. Single coil pickups, if you get a Strat style guitar, will generally be noisier than what's humbuckers. I'll show you humbuckers on the next guitar. But this guitar allows us to still do those dive bombs that we want to do without the headache of if I break a string or if I change strings, I get heavier strings or lighter strings. Now all of a sudden my guitar is unplayable. I can't do drop D. I can't do E flat tuning because the guitar is unplayable. I have to reset up the bridge in order for me to be able to do that. That's not a problem anymore. All right, but you notice that I turn this up, it gets loud. Humbucker pickups is like these single coils put together. Now when I use my pickup selector and I go up one, you'll hear that static, the buzzing, the humming, the 60 cycle hum go away. That's because now these are acting like humbuckers. So once again, and you'll notice, depending on where the lights are in the room, that can be very annoying, especially if I don't have a noise gate. It goes away when I turn up the volume, but these are very noisy. You can get noiseless pickups. You can buy additional pickups or different pickups that'll go in there that are noiseless. But in Strat style guitars, a lot of times that's an issue that you will have to find some way to deal with. So, if it's your first guitar and your only guitar, you may not want to have one with single coils, but you can. So if I'm not going to have one with single coils, what would I get? Well, you might get a Les Paul style guitar. Now, Les Paul style guitars, most of the time, are not going to have whammy bars. The ones that I've seen, the trem bar, the ones that I've seen, it's always been an aftermarket mod. Turn that back on. You notice, on isn't nearly as noisy as a Strat guitar was. There's still a little bit of hum, but it isn't like it was on the Fender Shore. This one uses humbuckers, right? And it's a stop tailpiece. Now, since it's a stop tailpiece, there's no springs on the back. And I can tune it to whatever I want. I can use different strings, I can do different tunings, I can do drop D, I can do E flat tuning, I can do standard tuning, I can do, whatever, down a whole step, and I'd never have to reset up the guitar. Now, that's not 100% true because you might have to adjust the neck, but most likely you'll be fine tuning it any way you want, and if the string breaks, no problem. So, is there an option where I have the humbucker and I have the whammy bar and it's not floating? Sure, there's a lot of options like that. One such option is on the Paul Reed Smith. There's other brands, but this just happens to be the one that I have. So in this case, I have the humbucker pickups, I have the whammy bar, I have it decked. And so now if you're a huge Eric Clapton fan or John Mayer fan and you're like, no, I want the single coil pickups, I like that sound, and there's nothing wrong with having single coil pickups. It's just, if it's my first and only guitar, that might not be the direction that I go, but it certainly is an option for you. Once I figure out, so that's the biggest thing. For me, when I'm telling people, giving them advice on buying a guitar, the biggest thing that I tell them is, what kind of bridge are you going to have? What kind of tailpiece does it have? Is it floating? Is it decked? Is it fixed? Right? Because if it's floating and it's your first guitar, first time you break a string, that might be the last time you play the guitar. Honestly. If you didn't buy extra strings and you're like, I'll get around to getting strings one of these days, and then one of these days turns into months and years. So, and especially for kids, if you don't want to have to be running to this, because kids have a tendency to break strings really fast. I have some guitars at my music school, and I leave them out for the kids to play, and it just surprises me how fast they break the strings. Like, I'll have strings on a guitar, if I'm just using it for practice, I'll have it on there for years. When I go to record or if I go to gig, then I'll change them. But if it's just sitting in my house, I'll leave it on there for years and they won't break. Kids are going to break the strings on their guitars. So if they now can't practice because they broke one string and their guitar won't stay in tune, that may be a deterrent for you to continue going to the guitar store to buy more strings every time that happens. So, or just buy 6 or 7 sets when you buy the guitar and you won't have that problem. The other thing that I look for is right here with the frets, these little bars, these metal bars, where they meet the edge of the fingerboard. I'll always take my finger and go like this. If it feels like those frets are cutting into my finger, or if they are actually literally cutting into your finger, don't buy the guitar. You might be able to buy another guitar of the same brand, same model that's on the wall, and it'll be fine. But especially on lower end guitars, but not always, not exclusively on lower end guitars. I'm surprised sometimes. What will sometimes happen is they'll put the metal frets in when the wood is still fairly humid. The guitar comes to Minnesota or wherever you're at, dries out, and now the fingerboard shrinks by 1/4 of a millimeter, and now the frets are sticking out of the edge. That, I don't know that there's a fix for that. You can buff them out, but why buy a guitar that's already in bad shape? So that is something that's very hard to fix, very time consuming, and can be costly if you're not going to do it yourself. So grab the guitar, go like this. If it cuts your fingers, doesn't matter how much the guitar costs, don't buy it. The other thing you want to do is plug in the cable, right? If this jack is loose, if you can feel it wiggling around, if you hear crackling when you do that, either have them fix it first or go get a different guitar. If you're in a guitar store and they have 100 guitars on the wall, just get a different one. Same thing with all the knobs. Turn the knobs, turn the volume knobs all the way, and if it has tone knobs, turn the tone knobs all the way. And if it gets to a point and stops, that's what you want. If it gets to a point and then it's like feels soggy, feels soft, you can turn it. Well, that just means that it's not screwed in tight on the backside. Once again, have them fix it before you buy the guitar or get a different guitar. Because that's a fairly easy thing to fix. You can just take off the back plate, open it up, fix it, unless it's on a Strat style. If it's on a Strat style guitar, which I have here, there is no back plate to get to the controls. To get to these controls, you have to take off the strings, take off all of these screws, you have to take off the pick guard, pull it off, and get to the electronics underneath. That's a huge pain in the butt, so just get a different guitar. Same thing with the knobs. Make sure that the knobs actually work, that things actually change. If you don't know how they work, ask the tech or ask the salesperson at the guitar store what the knobs are supposed to do. Sometimes it's not obvious. Sometimes they have push-pull pots. Make sure that those work. If they don't, have them fix it before you buy the guitar. So, to recap, don't get a floating bridge. Ooh, I almost lost my guitar here. My ninja-like reflexes saved me $700 guitar. Okay, so as a recap, don't get this. If it goes all the way back, if it floats back into the body, avoid that at all costs if this is your first guitar. You can get a stop tail piece, or you can get one that's flat, like a Strat style, that you can deck or block. Single coil, This has both. Single coil versus humbuckers, that's a personal preference. If it's my one and only guitar, I'm getting humbuckers, or I'm getting something with noiseless single coil pickups. There's certain models that come with it stock, or you can buy them. Once I have that figured out, I'm checking here. I say, okay, I like this guitar. I rub my fingers up and along the edge of the fingerboard. If I'm getting cut, that the guitar goes back on the wall, and I'm done looking at it. Next thing is I turn the knobs, make sure that everything is good. Make sure that they stop. You can hear it stop in both directions. If they don't, that means it's loose. Some guitars it's easier to fix than others. This one's not too bad, but once again, they shouldn't have broken guitars on the wall. Have them fix it, and then you go take a look at it, because there's a chance that the wires are loose underneath there too. So now you get it home, try to fix it, you have loose wires, now you're soldering your guitar, you burn the side because you aren't being careful. No, forget that. Let them do it. Then the very last thing I almost forgot. Take your finger and play every single fret on a guitar. Without the, well, you can do it either with or without the amplifier. I'll do it without the amplifier so you can hear. Make sure that you don't hear any buzzing when you do that, and make sure that every note is a unique note. Believe it or not, if the guitar is set up wrong, or if the neck is bowed this way, you should have a little bit of a curve like this so that the string can clear the frets. If it's bowed up like this, you'll actually have spots where you play 2 or 3 notes and it's all the same note. So do that on every single note, every single fret. If you hear buzzing, or if you hear buzzing is pretty easy to fix. If you hear multiples of the same note, have the tech at the guitar store fix the guitar and give it back to you. A lot of times they'll say, we'll give you a free setup when you purchase. Say, no, you set it up, and then I'll know if I want to purchase it. All right? Like, I'm not going to plop down $200, $300, $800 on a guitar that I already know is broken, and then have you fix it and then hope that I like it afterwards. I mean, sure, they'll refund your money. You know, usually you get a 45-day guarantee or a 30-day money-back guarantee. But no, have them fix it. You come back in 2 or 3 days and see if you like it. And if not, buy a different guitar. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can put messages in the comments. Visit rickoliva.com. Also, my music school, threeriversmusicacademy.com. That's it. Have a great holiday season, and I hope this was helpful for you.